As I reflect upon the three questions that were proposed to us, I'm going to focus more on what Julian had to say because I value his opinion a little bit more than mine in these matters. Not necessarily because he's an old friend and he knows me um, better than I know myself or another friend would know myself, but because living closely with somebody gives you a very unique perspective on them. And I don't think anybody else has that perspective on me. Um, so, with that in mind, I'll move on to the first question, which is about how I see myself or how he thinks I see myself. And I have to say right off the bat that his responses were very touching to me because he focused on how he thought I saw myself emotionally, which is something I didn't really consider. I talked on it briefly, but that was the entire emphasis of his answer, that I would see myself as somebody who's loyal or somebody who's passionate and driven. Um, but I struggled with answering that, and I definitely struggle with answering that. You'll see later on the third question. Um, I think in the future, my self evaluation will look a little deeper into how I see myself emotionally, as that was the focus of what he said. When I talked about it, I talked about how I saw myself as a thinker and things like that. On the second question, those roles were sort of reversed. When the question asked me to really focus on my emotion, I kind of came up with the same ideas that Julian came up with. Um, but when he was asked to speak about how I deal with things emotionally, he reverted to how I handle things logically, which I guess says something about how I deal with things emotionally or how I don't deal with things emotionally. Um, I think that's really interesting, and I'm going to look more into that and talk to him more about that because it really shows how I'm giving myself off as somebody who shuts themselves off emotionally. Um, and it raises questions for me. The third question, though, is where I'm going to spend the bulk of the time because it really perplexed me. I don't have a lot of, it's not that I don't have experience in fear, it's that I don't, maybe what I consider fear isn't something, or the same way as you consider fear. Um, how I deal with fear and attempt fearlessness um, is weird, is the most accurate way to put it. It's weird. I first put down to answer the question that I fear failure. And that's what Julian ran with. He said that I feel failure and that overcoming fear to me is moving on with success. Um, but I just decided that wasn't right. I don't fear failure. I mean, I have the same feelings about failure than everyone else has. Failure sucks. But I don't fear failure. Um, and then I said I fear success. I fear the pressure that success has. I fear that if you're great and then you fail, or if you're great, all the greats end up doing something crazy or losing their minds or something like that. If you're great, you'll lose yourself. And maybe that I fear that, but I don't. That's that's not what I fear. I don't think that's at all what I fear. Um, I think maybe I fear fear. I don't think about fear. I don't consider it. Also, I don't talk about it. I shut it out. I don't think I've considered fear a genuine emotion that I've had in the past 10 years of my relatively short life. I don't handle fear. And that makes it really difficult for me to assess a time when I was fearless and really even understand what being fearless is. If you're fearless, then what is the point of fear? Or is it more about overcoming fear, in which case, well, I consider that a different thing. But then, if I were to say theoretically that my fear is failure, how do you overcome a fear of an idea? Can you do that? You can overcome a physical fear. You can overcome a fear of heights by going up really high and jumping off. That's overcoming a fear of heights. But if you go out and you fail, you didn't overcome failure. So it stopped me. I don't know how to process it, and I'm still thinking about it very much so. And now I'm 2 minutes over my time talking about fear and what fear is to me. And I'll consider it more as time passes because at the moment I can't give an answer to the question. I don't know